I will put it there. So I have 2 One Piece notebooks now. Notebooks. There's one for episode 4 to 18, and this one is episode 19 to episode 30, which is the end of this arc. I am aware of the arc numbers, like how many there are. Sometimes I forget. Like, I start the arc and then I'm like, okay, this is this episode to this episode. But obviously through watching, I sometimes forget. But I the reason why I know and why I prefer to know is so that I can plan the reactions properly. Like, for the next 2 videos, it'll be 2 episodes, so that I end on episode 30, and then that's the end of this arc. I hope that you guys don't mind that too much. I don't think it's, like, it doesn't bother me knowing when it's coming to an end. It doesn't bother me, so I hope it doesn't bother you guys. Let's talk about episode 24. There's a lot. I'm sorry that there's so much, but let's just start. Episode 24, Hawkeye Mihawk. Swordsman ZORO falls into the sea. Damn, just found the episode name, and it's one of those which could have been very spoilery. Sometimes I forget to look away, so I'm glad this wasn't one of those times. So when I start my notes, I that's the only time I go and search the episode name. And sometimes I have forgotten to look away, and then I've seen the name, but it's never spoiled me. But this one could have really spoiled me, I think. At the start of the episode, we see Nami using her gender and looks to get her way again, and this time it goes further than flirting for free food. I feel like I have a lot to say, but I don't know where to start, and I already know I'm overthinking this, but this is Oda, and I think he doesn't just write something without having a good reason why he'd want to include it in the story, right? So as much as I know I'm overthinking it, I'm going to talk about it anyway. And by the time I was doing my episode 26 notes, I had definitely calmed down. I was still very worked up, so just bear with me. I know that a lot of you may not feel the way that I did at this point, but I'm going to be honest with how I felt. So let me just begin. First of all, I feel like they were already looking away, standing by the railing, talking about Arlong, and Nami could have just pushed them over. But Oda chose to include the part where Nami tricks them by saying she's going to change her clothes, blushing and winking at them suggestively. At this point, I'm not even mad at her anymore for stealing the ship, because they all knew she was a thief from the start. It's not like she was hiding that from them. I'm still put off her character though, because I personally don't like when a woman does this kind of thing, these things that Nami does. First of all, I don't think it's right to lead someone on by flirting with them just to get free food or anything else for that matter. You've seen in movies and stuff where girls flirt with nerdy guys to get them to do stuff for them. I just think that's a bullshit thing to do, especially when you have more than enough money to pay for it, because she did. She still had all the money from the treasure. It's not like she couldn't afford to eat. It puts me off because you're deceiving the other person, devaluing their service, and essentially treating them like shit. It's like, to me, a person that does that doesn't respect the other person, and not only that, they don't respect themselves. It makes me even more angry when I think about the fact that Zeph and Sanji are the kind of people that willingly feed those in need. As much as I know that a restaurant like this wouldn't work in real life, I still respect the policy, and that's what makes me more angry at Nami, who takes advantage of Sanji. But, you know, whatever, flirting to get something you want doesn't necessarily make you a bad person. It's just questionable behavior that I personally don't approve of. Although, now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure she was doing this to Sanji for a couple of days. Zoro in a previous episode did say that she's the only one for whom this is a nice experience. Nami mentioned free food and a pleasant atmosphere, essentially saying that it's nice to be gushed over and receive free food in the process. So at first, as you can hear in my notes, I'm trying to tell myself it's not that bad, just calm down. And then I keep thinking about it and I'm like, it is worse. Because it's just wrong to lead someone on, and what if it wasn't Sanji? What if it, and here's where you start seeing why it's bothering me so much. What if it was someone like Full Body, that Marine guy? He seems like the kind of person, and it's very rude of me. Let me just point out that it is not okay to make this kind of assumption, but because this is a fictional character, I am allowing myself to do that. But it wouldn't be okay to do this to anyone in real life. Like, oh, that seems like the kind of person who would do this. But because he's a character, I'm just going to use him as an example. He seems like the kind of person who would get fed up at one point, and then what if he forces her to put out for everything he's given her? Put out essentially means sleep with him. Of course, it would not make it okay, despite her leading him on and taking things for free. If he sexually assaults her, rapes her, whatever, of course it would still be wrong, because leading someone on isn't giving consent. It isn't. But for fuck's sake, you're making it very hard for victims of sexual assault to be taken seriously when every other case is a woman like Nami, whose argument in court would sound something like, I was leading him on for free food despite having enough money to pay, but I never gave him consent to touch me in this way. Like, that's not the best argument. Do you understand what I'm saying? You're just making it really difficult. I mean, even witnesses would have a hard time being on her side if he did something like push you into his room where no one was at a later point. Because all the witnesses would have been seeing was you flirting with him all the time. If he then takes you somewhere no one can see and then does something to you that you didn't want him to do, like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, the only thing people would have been seeing up to this point was you flirting. So it just makes the argument so much more difficult. I hope this makes sense. I know I'm ranting and rambling, but this touches on a real life issue, and I want you all to understand why at this point I really can't relate to Nami's character. Oh, and just one other thing. Someone commented before and said there's nothing wrong with flirting to get something for free because it's the same as being a girl on Instagram that sells private pictures or whatever. I'm not exactly sure of the example they used, but it was something like this. This was someone who commented and said that what Nami's doing is normal, like, oh, everyone does it. I have to strongly disagree with this. Girls who sell photos or escorts or anything like this are all accepting money from people who know what they're paying for. An agreement is made beforehand. You pay X money for X photos, for example. Leading someone on by flirting with them so that they like you and give you free food and attention is entirely different from my perspective. Since you are knowingly deceiving someone, it's just not okay. I think I actually wrote a lot more on this point, but I deleted it because I realized that I wasn't just thinking about Nami at this point. I was thinking about situations in South Africa, situations from girls that I personally know that has done this, that has been through shit because of some of this. And yeah, I deleted it because I think you understand how I feel without me having to drag it out too much at this point. Then I made a little star here because the next paragraph that I'm talking about is linked to something I said earlier, which was as much as I know that a restaurant like this wouldn't work in real life. So what I meant with that is, and what I was referring to is Sanji and Zef's restaurant, which their policy is that they'll feed anyone, regardless if it's an escaped criminal. If someone comes to their door hungry and in need of food, they will fill them up. So I said that a restaurant like this wouldn't work in real life because if they fed every hungry person that came to their doorstep, word would spread and more hungry people would come, and eventually the restaurant wouldn't be able to make enough profit to pay all the staff, rent and buy ingredients, while at the same time feeding people who aren't able to pay. To be honest, I think it would be, in a sense, cause a problem even if the restaurant was owned by a billionaire. So even if this was a billionaire's restaurant that feeds not only, paying clients, but whoever comes and asks for food, and he doesn't need the money, so he can just keep giving it money, it will still cause a problem. I mean, if there was a place like that, more people would end up in poverty since there would be no real need to work. They'd be sure of a place to eat every day, so their sense of urgency to find a job and make sure they stay employed or do it even if it's difficult or they don't like it would be diminished. I'm not arguing that we shouldn't feed or help people in need. Please don't misunderstand. I'm just pointing out that the solution isn't as perfect and easy as one would think. Think of a prison, for example. Lots of people in South Africa do bad things and at some point decide to get caught on purpose, so they can spend a few months in prison with free meals and a warm bed to sleep in every night. In a similar sense, if you feed even bad people, like Zef said, even escaped criminals, you make it easier for them to be bad because they don't have to face any real consequences. They know they can keep being bad and do bad things because they'll always have a place to come for food, even when things get too tough. Of course, sometimes your kindness might inspire a few people to turn over a new leaf and be good instead. I'm just explaining why I said that the policy of feeding everyone that asks, whether they can pay or not, wouldn't work as easily in real life without some kind of program to make sure that those people don't start relying on the service and use it as a crutch. That may not be the best way to put it, because if your leg is broken, you may need a crutch to help you walk at first. But you need to make sure you also do the right exercises to train yourself to walk without that crutch again. The problem is when most people find a crutch in life, and it's easier to make use of the crutch than to learn to walk without it, they choose what is easier and just keep using the crutch. Damn it, I hope this makes sense, although I feel there has to be a better way to explain how I feel about this. But I'm just saying that, as I've explained just now, it doesn't always work as easy as we want it to. And I can talk about this in a whole other video. I could write a book about this. And that's what I love about One Piece, because it addresses things like this in a little 24 episode or 10 episode arc, whatever. It addresses so many issues that is relevant to our lives still today. But I just wanted to explain how I feel about it, and it's not something that we can solve. This problem is not something we can solve in a YouTube review. I just wanted to talk about it and explain how I felt, because a lot of people in the last video did comment and say that, I don't understand Sanji and why he does what he does and why it's a good thing, and I just wanted to explain that there's more than one way of looking at something. Every good deed is double-sided. Every bad deed is double-sided, in the same way that you guys are explaining to me how all these characters, even Nami that does bad things, she has a good side. There's a reason for it. It's like yin and yang. Every good has bad, every bad has good. And even with the most sincere good deeds, you can sometimes cause not so good things to come from it. Okay, next part. Mihawk tells Zoro he is worthy to be called a swordsman in the weakest ocean, East Blue. The other oceans, I think I heard in episode 25 or 26, are West Blue, South Blue, and North Blue. And then I ask, is the Grand Line also an ocean, or is it like a line that you pass and then you go into another ocean? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, stupid example, are they in East Blue now, and then there's a Grand Line, almost like, when two countries, the border, is the Grand Line like a border, and then if you cross it, then you're on the other ocean. I don't know if it's an ocean. I think it's an ocean though. And what about All Blue? I'm pretty sure I heard Zeph say All Blue is somewhere in or past the Grand Line. Not all of this makes sense to me at the moment. I need to start making a map, but I won't Google anything because I would prefer to find this out by myself while watching the anime. So far, all I really know is that East Blue is an ocean and it is the weakest one. Almost like the first level of a game. Mihawk keeps asking everyone, what's your mission? Well, he asked it to both Zoro and Luffy. It seems like the answer helps him determine what kind of person they are. He seems to be very good at reading people, just like he expected Zoro to be able to see that the difference in their skill was far too great. It seems like Mihawk himself is able to make good deductions about people, even if he's shown very little, or just from that one answer, if that makes sense. Luffy and Zoro's relationship is absolutely friendship goals. There were a lot of small scenes in this episode that just really points out how much they trust and care for each other already, and they know what's best for the other, like Luffy holding back those two who wanted to fight Mihawk alongside Zoro. I think his name is Yosaku, or those two. As far as I know, they knew Zoro for a very long time compared to Luffy, who has only known him for a short time. And yet Luffy knows better than to interrupt Zoro's fight, even if it is to help him. It looks like Mihawk could have killed Zoro easily after stabbing him the first time. Well, considering what he did to the ship, he could have killed him easily even before that. So in a sense, he really respected Zoro by giving him a fight at all to begin with. Or maybe he was just humoring him at first. After all, he did say he was bored, and that was the only reason he went after Don Krieg and his men in the first place. So he says, On one hand, I really respect Zoro, who would choose death over defeat. The promises he has made are so important to him, he would rather die than live not being able to keep them. On the other hand, although all of this has proven to us how strong his will is, I think maybe Oda had also wanted to show us that Zoro was still very immature, although I'm not sure if that's the right word. A better way to put it would maybe be that Zoro still has a lot of growing to do, not only with regards to his skill, by showing us the vast difference between Zoro and Mihawk, but also in terms of his mind. You don't become the best by winning every fight, because that could also just mean that you're always fighting people that are weaker than you, and what's the point of that? What's the point of being the strongest person in the weakest ocean? You don't become the best by winning every fight, you become the best by not giving up when you lose. And then I wrote some of my other notes, but I came back at a later point and wrote the following. Okay, I just thought of something I think is really important. It's just a theory, I might be wrong, but hear me out. In the last paragraph, I wrote, you become the best by not giving up when you lose. This episode ends with Zoro losing, but despite him saying during his fight with Mihawk, death may be better than being defeated, Zoro chooses to keep going. Despite his loss, he chooses to fight another day. During the fight, there was flashes of Quina, not only of their first fight with real swords, but also of the day she died. These were not shown like a flashback for us as viewers, they were more like flashes in his mind, as if to represent an intense internal struggle. It makes me think of when someone has experienced something traumatic and even a year later they experience things like heightened reactivity to certain stimuli and even flashbacks. These are symptoms of PTSD. This makes me rethink Quina's death. It's not that I don't believe she couldn't have died falling down the stairs. People die every year slipping in the shower or even falling backwards when tilting on a chair and hitting their head really hard in school. Like kids have died like that in school. By, when you tilt your chair, you like balance on the back legs of the chair, and then people have died that way too. People die in bizarre ways, and not even bizarre, these normal deaths, or I don't even know how to put those deaths, and that's how a lot of people feel about Quina falling down the stairs. Like, how could that kill her? She was what, an 11-year-old girl? People die that way. But the more I think about it, the more I believe that Quina did commit suicide. In my notes for episode 19, I wrote, Andrew Perez commented the following. In the manga, during the funeral, Zoro yells at the body of Quina saying, you made a promise and now you're running away, obviously being upset. The fact that Zoro, a child at the time, in his frustration and sadness, accused Quina of running away made me think she might have committed suicide. Seeing Zoro's desperate attempt to defeat Mihawk, despite seeing him being visibly afraid many times in the episode, meaning that on some level he was aware of the vast difference in their skill, accompanied by the PTSD-like flashes of Quina wishing she was born as a boy, and also of the day she died and when they were walking with her coffin, all those flashbacks. It all makes me believe that rushing into this fight was almost like trying to attempt suicide himself. Maybe not on a conscious level, but for Zoro it was victory or death, and I find it very difficult to believe that Zoro was not able to see that he stood no chance against Mihawk. Even Sanji said at one point in the episode, your opponent was the world's greatest. The result was obvious. See, I can almost guarantee that every single person listening to me right now has thought about committing suicide at least once in their life. It's not that hard for me to believe that Zoro thought about it too. In front of him stood a man he knew he couldn't beat. With every swing of each of his swords, it became more clear to him. What Luffy said flashed in his mind. Quina's death flashed in his mind. And I'm not saying this because I think these were flashing in his mind. It was shown in the episode. And what did Zoro yell to Quina in the manga? You made a promise, now you're running away. The promise Zoro made to Quina and Luffy weighed heavy on his mind. Losing to Mihawk meant breaking those promises. Maybe for a moment he considered running away too. The part where everything goes completely black and white in the episode, it was like suddenly everything whited out and then it was just Zoro and Mihawk in black and white for a bit. That may have represented Zoro's lowest point mentally. Death may be better than being defeated, he had said. Quina may have chosen death. I'm not saying this is true, obviously I don't know, it's just my theory and quite a few other people's theory as well. She may have chosen death because regardless of how many fights she won, she would always lose in her mind because she was born a girl. But in the end, Zoro lost the fight and yet he lifted up his sword and said that he would fight again. You don't become the best by never losing. Quina never once was shown losing a fight. You become the best by not giving up when you lose. And a lot of people, suicide is often the ultimate giving up on life. So do you understand why all of this kind of made sense to me? It was like, I feel like Zoro's backstory, at least this part of it, has come full circle. And this episode marks the moment when his journey to becoming the best really begins. Because at this point, we've seen him as the best. But he was the best in the weakest ocean. Like I said though, this is just my theory about Zoro's character development. Just a theory. Mihawk is an amazing character. He saw Zoro's determination and sincerity, and I believe that's why he spared him at all. His mercy gave Zoro the opportunity to choose life, to overcome the mentality that losing isn't part of the journey to becoming the best, because it is. And one more thing, Zoro says in the end, not holding back his tears, I will not lose again. I'll never be defeated anymore. And although that may seem like it contradicts my theory at first, I don't think it does. Through finally losing to someone other than Quina, he has now lost his fear of losing and knows that he doesn't need to never have lost to be the best. Maybe all this time he had felt like he would let Quina down by losing to someone else. So losing meant death to him. But he ends with, I will never be defeated anymore. Almost like he's saying, losing doesn't mean I am defeated, because instead of running away, he has found the strength to keep fighting, even if he does lose. Ironically, more often than not, losing your fear of losing through having lost makes you more clear-headed, more focused, more confident, and your chances of losing are even slimmer. But when you fight with no fear of losing, you're only focused on the present moment, on this fight, and your chances of winning is that much greater. And that's why I believe Zoro will never be defeated again. You can't defeat someone who has no fear of losing. You can't defeat someone who will never give up for as long as they live. I don't know if I mentioned this in the reaction, but this is my favorite episode of One Piece that I've watched. I love this episode so much. The scene where Luffy has his head stuck in the planks is a good example of good writing, in my opinion, when he wanted to, out of anger and frustration, he wanted to punch Mihawk, and then his hand got stuck because Mihawk was just like, boop. And then he got his head stuck. On the surface, it serves as, this is how I see that scene. On the surface, it serves as comedic relief and as something funny most kids and, well, anyone would really laugh at. But if you think about it for a second, it also shows us, despite Luffy's amazing superpower, he is still a joke compared to the things that await them once they reach the Grand Line. As strong as he is now, they still have such a far way to go. Literally, considering I'm 24 episodes into an anime with over 800 episodes. And it isn't even close to ending as far as I've heard. Mihawk asks Luffy, what is your mission? And Luffy says, Pirate King. A mission, according to Mihawk, that is even more difficult than it will be for Zoro to surpass him. That's very interesting. It kind of has to be more difficult since Luffy is the lead character. So it wouldn't be like that great if a different character had a more difficult thing to overcome or reach than, you know, the actual main character. Although I'm not sure. He is the main character. Yeah, it's like there's a lot of main characters, but I think Luffy is the main, right? Okay, here we go. Notes on episode 25. The emergence of the superb kicking skill. Sanji versus the Iron Wall Iron Wool Pearl. Krieg says at the start of this episode that there are a lot of people with the power of a devil fruit in the Grand Line. So far, I only know about Luffy and Buggy. Luffy has the power of Rubber Man, Buggy has Splitting Man. As Krieg talks, a map is shown. It looks kind of strange. It looks kind of strange. It has a slim piece of land running through the middle and two big oceans on either side. So you can see it here. So yeah, this is, I don't exactly know what I'm looking at here, but he's talking about, is that the Grand Line? Is it like, this is East Blue and then they have to pass over this piece of land, and then they're in the Grand Line? I don't know. Krieg also thinks that Mihawk used a special power to cut the ship. I don't know if that's true. I mean, of course it's not possible in real life, but a lot of things that has happened so far is not possible in real life. Not even including the devil fruit powers. For example, Krieg being blasted with a giant cannon doesn't even scratch him. He does have that special armor though, so I'm not sure if that has magical properties and he considers it like some kind of power like he thinks Mihawk has. But Gaimon, for example, fell into a box and got stuck. What I'm saying is that I'm not sure at this point what is considered supernatural and what is just, you know, part of the story or this world, what is normal in this world. Even Sanji, when Patsy and Karn were thrown towards the restaurant in that little fish boat, jumped up inhumanly high and kicked the boat away. Although I understand he probably learned to fight from Red Leg Zeph, so that's why his legs must be super strong. But still at this point, it seems to me like there's a fine line between supernatural powers given from the devil fruit, other powers like Krieg thinks Mihawk used to slice the ship in half, and then just crazy strong, seemingly inhuman powers like what Sanji displayed with his kick, and even Krieg when he threw the fish boat in the first place. I think I need to make a list of my favorite One Piece characters, but also a list of my least favorite, or maybe like the weirdest villains. Pearl and the Nyaa brothers have to be included on that list so far, and this is what the list would look like right now. Favorite One Piece characters: Zoro, Luffy, Usopp, Zeph, Mihawk, in that order. And weirdest One Piece villains: Nyaa brothers and Pearl the Shield Dude. I think I'd put Pearl over... Oopsie, what did I just do? I think I'm going to put Pearl above the Nyaa brothers because I think he's weirder. The episode ends with Gin towering over Zeph, a gun to his head. And I'm very mad at Gin at this point, but you know, it's to be expected. He's a pirate. Episode 26. Ooh, this episode. Zeph and Sanji's ambition, the Sea of Dreams, all blue. Short summary of the episode. Just a recap, because I know I've talked a lot. With Zeph held captive by Gin, Sanji has no choice but to take Pearl's hits, and he reflects on why Zeph means so much to him as he begins to have a flashback about his first meeting with him and how his encounter with the pirate chef will change his life forever. In this episode, I see that Sanji was, for reasons I don't know, working on a cruise ship. In the flashback, he's talking to a bunch of the cooks and they're telling him that all blue does not exist. I like how in this anime, many of the characters have a very strong dream, but the anime doesn't just show us how they're going to make the dreams come true. It also shows the different ways in which people, other people, and ourselves get in the way of making our dreams come true. Kuina's father, for example, told her that her dream will never come true because she's a girl. Sanji was told that his dream is impossible because all blue doesn't exist. And not all of us overcome the challenges that stand in the way of our dreams. And even those of us that do, more often than not, it comes at a very great cost. For example, Zeph and Sanji had the same dream, and Zeph gave his power and his dream to make sure Sanji just has an opportunity one day to make his dream come true. And then I have a little star here with a random note. Zeph was at the Grand Line for 1 year. He came back, and this must have been one of the first ships he attacked since getting back. And all his men look like they're in pretty good shape, compared to the others who were all mad with terror or half dead when they returned from the Grand Line. So I wonder why he chose to come back after 1 whole year and started collecting treasure again from cruise ships. Like that was the first thing he decided to do. One of Zeph's men said, "There's a storm approaching and it's even bigger than last time. I wonder why he specifically says last time. Does that have something to do with what happened in the Grand Line and why they came back? Only other thing I can think of is they found one piece, it was empty, there was nothing there, and then they came back and they were like, well, fuck it, let's go get other treasure then. I don't know, why would they have given up and come back if they weren't even defeated? Like, they all looked fine. In the reaction, after seeing Zeph sacrifice his own leg to save Sanji, I say, okay, so he also didn't cut his leg off to keep Sanji alive. That would have been something else. And by something else, I meant it would have been dark as fuck. I say this because it was my second time guessing wrong. Second time. I thought at first that Sanji and Zeph were family, which they're not. Then I thought, after seeing a few of Sanji's flashbacks and hearing Sanji say he cost Zeph his dream, I thought that Zeph had cut off his leg so that Sanji wouldn't die of starvation. Which is also proven to be wrong in the episode. However, two of my patrons, Leo and Assimilator on Discord, talked to me about it and let me know the truth about what happened in the manga. Put bluntly, Zeph didn't lose his leg in the water. He actually cut it off and ate it himself to survive on that rocky island. I knew from the get-go Oda was a good writer because of what people were always saying. Calling him Goda, I don't know how to say that. Goda. Basically, he's a god tier writer. But from this episode, I really began to not just respect his writing, but be in awe of it. And now I'm thinking, as I'm reading this, Zeph valued being a chef more than he valued being a pirate. Because he didn't cut off his arm and eat that, he cut off his leg and ate that. So he would rather have given up his dream of being a pirate or his life of being a pirate, because if there was a chance that he would survive, he'd prefer to be a chef. Maybe I'm overthinking that, but that's what I think. I think it's important to take note of the fact that Zeph was more than willing to kill Sanji off until he heard what Sanji's dream was. Like, I kept saying in the reaction, oh, Zeph MVP, I love Zeph, Zeph is the best, Zeph. But he still was the kind of person that would have killed Sanji. Kill the kid. He wants to die, just kill him. Until he heard what Sanji's dream was. Only then did he care to save Sanji at all. But damn, everything he did after that makes me barely even think of the fact that he almost killed Sanji. Like, I don't even really care at this point, because I'm like, look what he did, dude. Like, you know? And I think that's what people are expecting of my attitude towards Nami. They're thinking like, oh, you're gonna see her backstory and then you're gonna like her so much because you realize why she's doing what she's doing. And that may be true, but it also may not. I actually wrote, to be honest, after editing these 3 episodes, the reaction highlights, I'm starting to think to myself, why did I get so worked up yesterday about what Nami did? I mean, sure, I don't have to like her character, but I also shouldn't let what she does get to me so much. I think it has more to do with, as I've mentioned, it has more to do with situations in real life and how I feel about that than actually caring about Nami at all. Sorry, this is a little bit off topic, but I just had this thought and I felt like I needed to say it. So yeah, I definitely over-talked about Nami and her reasons and what she did and like what that could cause, because it's not going to happen here, but I don't know, I feel like there's a reason she didn't just push them, because they were standing towards the rails. She could have just pushed them there. She's shown to be pretty strong with her stick and stuff, whatever that stick thing was she had. So I think there has to be a reason why Oda chose to include that part of her seducing them. And especially because she also, you know, was shown to flirt with Sanji to get free food. Like, I'm just thinking that he didn't just put that in for no good reason. He didn't have to, because it's not like all girls are that way. Okay, enough of that. I continue to write here. I'm not going to lie, I think there's a huge chance that I would have been crying at the part where Sanji was eating his bread, thinking about the leftovers he threw away on the ship, crying, and his stomach was grumbling. And then he fucking dropped his bread, and you can see what I'm writing here, like, I'm not gonna scream, but I feel like screaming, like that part, like my heart went out to him. It was like, everything here went like, ugh. But knowing that they survived all of that made it easier for me to watch. So although my heart ached and my throat tightened, I didn't cry because I just kept telling myself, at least they made it and started that restaurant. But fuck it, even while editing, seeing him wipe his tears and drop that damn moldy piece of bread is hurting my heart so much. I'm so happy that ship came. Thank God. Oda, God. Thank you, Oda, for saving them. I wonder if the treasure they had in that bag was what they used to buy the ship they used for the Barati, to start their own business. So as much as I like to think that, because as much as Sanji's quote is important, like, can you eat treasure? Can treasure fill your stomach? Like when you're stranded on an island. No, it can't. Doesn't mean shit. But what do you think bought them that ship? What do you think made it possible for them to have that and then to be able to feed other hungry, starving people? Do you understand what I'm saying? I like that the anime doesn't just... It shows you that treasure isn't everything, but is definitely not nothing either, you know? I mean, how often do we get stuck on stranded islands? It's just that we're supposed to see one thing isn't always everything. One thing can't solve all our problems. Okay, then at the end of the episode, Pearl sarcastically comments on Sanji's speech and proclaims that the restaurant is now out of business and will become a pirate ship. Luffy is enraged and stretches his leg in the air, destroying the fin of the Barati using Gomu Gomu no Ono. First of all, I am freaking worried because I just realized Luffy may fall in the water. On the other hand, I freaking love Luffy because I can really relate to how emotional he gets in moments like these. When he sees someone else's resolve and then fights not just for himself, but for them. He already sees Sanji as a crew member, and I hope that after this, Sanji will sail with Luffy to make his dream come true of discovering All Blue. I really have a soft spot for characters that, like Luffy did in this episode and in episode 24 as well with Zoro and Mihawk, how he like screamed for Zoro, like he had this raw emotion. It's just amazing that these characters have that and that the voice actors can convey that. I have a soft spot for characters like that. It's also one of the reasons why Eren from Attack on Titan is one of my favorite characters ever. Interesting that at this point, the only person whose parents I've seen in the past is Usopp. I've seen both his father and mother. His mother passed away. His father is still on the ship with Shanks. I know nothing about Luffy, Zoro, or Sanji's parents, and nothing about Nami's past at all at this point. I'm sure since they're going after her soon, Zoro and them already are going after her, that we'll find out soon enough. Okay, thank you guys so much for hearing my thoughts on these 3 episodes. I'm looking forward to watching episode 27, 28, and then for the next video, 29 and 30. Phew! I know this video was a long one, so I really appreciate anyone that made it up to this point. Big shout out again to Tiago for sponsoring this video. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.